The Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of Thursday, June 24th to order. Can we have roll call, please? Or, I'm sorry, can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. And can we have roll call, please?
Ken Nelson.
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
Mary Scott. Absent. Virginia Higley.
Here.
Frank Alimo. Here. John Petronella.
Here.
Vinnie Grillo. Absent. Nelson Correa. Absent. And Richard Suzak is here.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to announce the fire evacuation to the rear of the chambers through the double doors. Exit a safe distance away from the building. Or to my left, your right, you can exit the side of the chambers, go down one flight of stairs and out the back of the building to a safe distance. Next, can I have approval of minutes for June 10th, 2021?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chair, I did watch the meeting, so just
Okay.
let you know. Okay.
Motion's made and seconded. Are there any comments, questions, concerns, or corrections? Commissioner Higley.
I had a very minor one. I'm not sure it's a correction, but it's just an observation. On page 5 of 8, just above, the paragraph above votes 330, it says, I don't have to read the whole thing, but it says units and the precedent that was set with the Hazardville School. I thought it would be better said with the former Hazardville Grammar School.
It says what was stated. You
Okay.
don't reword, I mean, if that was what was
All right.
meant, then that's
I
what
just
should
thought of
have been said.
clarifying it. Okay. Then I don't have anything.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. And that is Commissioner Suzak. Okay, moving on. Discussion with the consultant regarding update of the Enfield zoning regulations. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. Good evening. Hopefully my microphone's on. Yeah. Okay. I'm not used to the real world anymore, so. But thank you guys for having me tonight. I wanted to provide a general update as to some work on the zoning regulations and what we're doing. And I wanted to introduce you to revisions to the site development standards. So we made our way through kind of the first, at least third of the zoning regulations, which includes all the general provisions, and then all the way through the zoning districts, both residential and commercial. And I've skipped over all your special regulation provisions and jumped to the site development standards because I actually believe they're one of the most important sections of the regulations, one of the most challenging sections, and wanted to get some good work into them to kind of provide you with a draft, which I did, of where we're kind of heading with this. One, please understand that as we go through this process, the drafts I give you are messy. They will remain messy. It's just a messy process. In the end, it all gets tightened up and pulled back together. So I realized today as I was going through prepping that some of the numbering and lettering is out of order. A section starts in B, not in A. I will get to all that, when we get down to that final version, that will all be cleaned up. So please just bear with that. This section of the regulation, from my perspective, whenever I work on zoning regulations for a community, I feel the site development standards end up being the most critical. And I think that's for a number of reasons. One is I've found over the years, I'm not saying this is the case with you guys, I'm just saying it's my general experience, is that when commissions struggle with approvals, or just dealing with applications through the approval process, it's often, I think, due to the fact that they don't trust in their site development standards, that they're not confident as to what's going to come out the other side if they say yes. And that, for me, becomes a critical part of the importance of updating and improving this portion of the regulations. They're also important because at the end of the day, they are where the regulations kind of the rubber hits the road. Any development requiring site plan and or a special permit has to deal with these provisions of the regulations. And it's those applications that require site plan and special permit that you guys as a commission deal with constantly. And ultimately staff, when I say you guys, not just the commission, but staff also. So, started making my way through these regulations, and ultimately I want to just kind of go through tonight and give you a summary of some of the changes. And then I'm going to leave you with kind of if you have questions and comments at the end, that's fine. If you have questions and comments as I go through, that's fine. But ultimately, I really want you guys to kind of, when you have the time, take a look at these regulations. And if you have issues, concerns, or whatever, reach out to me. We still have time to make changes. This is a draft. It's a work in progress. I don't want you to think anything's final here. And I'm still myself struggling with some of the language and how to best write it. And I'll get to that. I'll point that out at some point along the way in here. So the first section, section 10, is the site development standards and requirements, is just a general introduction of purpose and intent of the regulations. Section 1010 is actually a new section of these regulations, and trying to pull together kind of those standards or things that are most important in the context of sustainability and sustainable development, which is a theme we've been using in the POCD updates, and which is a theme that's becoming more common as adopted into zoning regulations. So this section includes provisions on energy efficiency, low impact development, performance standards, which you already have in your regulations. They're just being relocated and tweaked. Infrastructure and utilities, surface and groundwater protection, water and sewer supply, and existing topography and vegetation. So kind of how do we deal with these items in the context of development applications? This is one of those areas where more work is still needed, especially on the surface and groundwater protection. I need to have a discussion with staff about incorporation of MS4 provisions here, and really kind of guidance from you guys as to how heavy you want to go into the MS4, or kind of do you want to accept that engineers understand it and design to it. So we'll come up with specific provisions there related to stormwater. Ultimately, as I kind of said, this more holistic approach of these big picture items in the context of these applications. Section 1020 are new and what I feel are more robust landscape design standards. As I look across the landscape in Enfield, it's evident that over time you guys have definitely improved your standards. You have some really good landscape design out there. You have some older developments that have not so good landscape design, and that's common, not picking on you. You can see kind of as regulations change and improve, you can see it play out on the landscape. But these, I believe, are a bit more robust. I think you are a community that can elevate your expectations and requirements, and trying to shift the approach here a little bit to what I call kind of a context-sensitive flexibility. And there's a rigidness to zoning ultimately that, you know, just to say, we require buffers between dissimilar uses or dissimilar zones. So let's just say industrial and residential. And a typical kind of historic approach, once again, not just you guys, most communities, has been we need a large buffer between these uses because they're dissimilar. So we're going to write in our regs 100-foot buffer. Anyone building an industrial development adjacent to residential uses or residential zone has to provide a 100-foot buffer. If you really think about that, the intent is correct, but whether or not a 100-foot buffer is needed in every circumstance really becomes questionable. You know, what is the topography out there? Is there an existing grade change between those districts, between those uses? Is there existing vegetation, you know, evergreen trees and so forth? What are the specific conditions? So in this case, The regulations I've drafted related to buffer requirements provide a flexible buffer requirements that say between dissimilar uses or dissimilar zoning districts, that a buffer of somewhere between a minimum of 10 feet and a maximum of 100 feet needs to be provided. And the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that they are satisfying the need for a buffer to the extent based on the circumstances. And then it has additional language that says the buffer can be berms, it can be plantings, it can be, fence, whatever it may be. And ultimately, they're going to come to you with a design that says, based on this circumstance, based on the use we're proposing, the proximity or lack of proximity of adjacent, residential development, we believe that a buffer of 35 feet in depth using various undulating berms and various styles of plantings, along with fencing in this area, is adequate to satisfy the needs of the buffer. And that's going to give you guys then the ability to say, okay, let's think about this, Oh, and it also requires that they provide an elevation, a profile of what that buffer is going to look like, not just a plan view, but kind of what it looks like from the property looking outwards and so forth. This, from my perspective, is a dramatic shift and change that I'm asking you guys to consider. At the end of the day, you guys can tell me I'm crazy and we can go back to something more traditional, but I truly believe in the communities where we've been successful in adopting these, that ultimately you get a better site design overall. Developers not trying to accommodate the 100-foot buffer, let's say, and wedge in the development they want to do. They're more apt to look at the site and say, okay, how can we best design this site, based on what it is we need and based on the buffer requirements that the commission wants and based on what's the existing characteristics with adjacent properties. So it's this move towards this idea of being context sensitive rather than rigid. This is going to apply in every circumstance regardless of its need. And the first time I actually drafted a regulation like this, it was based on a certain section of a community, was due to the fact they had these really large buffer requirements and they had these significant elevation changes where, the properties behind that were being protected by the buffers were actually, 40 feet in elevation higher than the properties where the development would be occurring and the buffers would be required. So it was that circumstance that got me thinking about this idea of, well, in those circumstances, significant buffer, there's no buffer you could do to cut down visual, the properties are perched up above, and also just consideration of things like headlights or site lighting shining onto those properties. All the light fixtures were going to be shorter than the elevation change and so forth. So that's just me providing kind of how this started to be developed and thinking about this approach and change. Yes,
I
Richard.
have a question in terms of, the only thing that comes to mind is if presently we have a 100-foot buffer and we pass these new regulations that say it can be between 10 to 25 feet and you have to demonstrate, what you might want to do. Is it possible that somebody could say, geez, I need more space in my facility. And look at this, I can get 75 feet of more building in on this site if I look at the new regulations versus their old regulations. Right. And then all of a sudden, the local homeowner says, wait a minute, I really like the old system that you had. And all of a sudden, as long as he meets, certain criteria and can demonstrate to us that potentially it could happen. And I guess a lot of it has to do with the interpretation that we would take from either their presentation or the input that we get from the local community as to whether it's appropriate or not appropriate. But, what I don't want to do is lead them down this path that, oh, yeah, look at this. All of a sudden, there is a loophole in these regulations, and let's take advantage of that loophole.
Yep.
So, that's, the only thing that probably concerns me is how do we, keep status quo, and this is for new development, not necessarily, going back to modifying existing, conditions.
Yeah, so awesome and great question. It's a multiple part answer. First and foremost, the existing developments are bound to their site plan approval that they initially got. So they can't just on their own go and reduce that buffer because your regulations have changed. If they wanted to make changes to that buffer, and as you said, say put an addition on the building and so forth and so on, they need to come back to you for site plan approval. At that time of application, though, them coming back to you for site plan approval, then the regulations that exist at that moment are the regulations that are applicable to that application. Therefore, they could come to you and ask for a modification or change to that initial buffer under the new site plan application. And that's a circumstance you guys are going to have to, consider and deal with and make a decision on. I think there could be circumstances where you would be justified in saying, no, the existing conditions here, the expectations set by a prior, application and hearing with that 100-foot buffer, that we just don't feel comfortable granting, a change. I don't want to say a modification because it's not, but a new buffer that's reduced. And I think there's circumstances where that would be applicable and fine. I think there's also circumstances, though, where you'll see in the application that, hey, look, that buffer probably was excessive. There hasn't been, negative impacts on the adjacent properties. And the redesign that they're proposing, includes further enhancements, whether that be plantings or fencing or berming or whatever they so choose. And where you may say a reduction in that buffer to allow this expansion, is reasonable. And it could also just be that the way the site's going to be designed, maybe the building gets closer and that's why the buffer is being reduced, but the parking facilities or the loading docks or none of that is changing in location and therefore, and is not adjacent to that area. So it becomes this kind of context sensitive process where you really try and take into consideration those unique site and situation characteristics to make a decision on what's best. It does, I'm going to be honest, it makes you guys work a bit harder. You don't get to just say, is it 100 feet or not? You have to kind of work a bit harder at coming to a decision.
Yeah, because the other thing is that recently we had, a industrial facility that was approved on North Maple Street. And, there was a considerable increase in the buffer between the residential zone and, the new construction based upon some negotiations that occur, which reflects, that mindset of local residents in a residential zone, sort of being against the fact that, all of a sudden I'm going to have this encroachment on my backyard and what is that going to do to me and how does that affect us? In terms of, I think it's a good idea, but I think that what we need to do is maybe tweak it so that, it's a little more sensitive to, the residents that might be in a particular area. But, again, there could be areas that are not developed in terms of, it could be a residential, but there's nothing there. And all of a sudden, buyer beware if you buy that property and you want to, sort of put a piece of land on it. So all of a sudden, we can give the flexibility to those situations that might not be affected by this buffer system, and also be sensitive to the zones that it might be encroaching upon.
No, those are great insights, and I'm already running through my head. I think I could add a provision into the buffer requirements that state something specific to existing site. Existing approved site plans with buffers, that if they are coming in for a new site plan or a modified site plan that's going to include a request for changes to the existing buffer, that we lay out kind of a set of criteria that need to be considered and or met in doing so, that could take into account kind of those things we're assuming, but I haven't worked through my head yet, of, you know, expectations of adjacent properties or, you know, potential impacts that were concerned back at the initial approval and so forth. So I could add additional criteria into the provision to try and address that. So, yep. So, and that's what this is about. At the end of the day, just remember, these will be your regulations. You have to be comfortable with them. And I give and take. I'm not trying to force anything onto you. And, you know, I can't always think of everything in the moment. So when you ask questions like that, when you make those comments, then I start thinking, oh, there is a way to actually further enhance this provision to kind of maybe address some of those issues up front. So, cool. Refuge storage, I won't bore you with very much, but specific provisions being added, a section that basically addresses dumpsters, their locations, their screening, and so forth. Just providing, you know, where I feel, you know, a bit more robust standards could be beneficial. Same with drive-through windows. You guys have, you guys already have provisions and so forth, but I think this is just, once again, a bit more robust with specific provisions. I'm going to take a look at this, and I'll just raise this to you now. One of the biggest trends in the drive-through window world that's started to emerge and is the result of kind of the demand on drive-through windows from the pandemic is multiple lane drive-throughs. I know we've seen them historically with banks where you have the direct teller and then you have maybe the tube teller and then maybe an ATM teller where sometimes there's multiple lanes. But now we're actually starting to see it in pharmacies. We're starting to see it in fast food, that they're going to the multiple lane layout. And one of the key things driving that is the order via app, that if you can put the app people who ordered ahead in one line and put the order on site people in another line, you can increase efficiency. And I just haven't sat down and started thinking about yet how a regulation would look to accommodate that. But I think it's worthy of exploration because you are going to start getting requests on it. It's popping up everywhere, or at least in all the industry. The industry writings, everyone that uses drive-through windows is kind of contemplating it, talking about it, and seeing designs. And we're also kind of seeing the drive-through only establishments emerging, where there's no more. They were starting to emerge before the pandemic. There's no interior seating or anything. They're just drive-through facilities. So in Bloomfield, there's a Dunkin' Donuts that has no interior access. It's just a building with a drive-through window. That's the first one I've seen locally around here, but they're also popping up. So some additional thoughts going to go into these drive-through provisions. Provide some architectural character, historic preservation, and design standards. This is an area of zoning that is challenging, or there's limits. We can't really regulate aesthetics. You can't tell someone, you know, you can't have a pink house or, you know, a blue building. But I do find that if you provide, and I think the section starts off with language that says strongly encourage or something in the first paragraph of the section. If you provide standards and kind of say to an applicant, you know, we encourage these architectural standards to be considered, it puts them on notice to let them know you care about architecture and design and that they should pay attention to it in their application, and that any good applicant who I've worked with over the course of my career will bend over backwards to make you guys happy to get their approval. So the good ones will realize, okay, we'll put additional attention into architecture if that's going to make the commission happy. So they're not rigid standards that say you have to do this and comply, because we can't really do that, but they kind of set a foundation to inform the applicant that this is important. So, if you're up against a historic district or historic area, you better pay, even though the historic regs aren't applying to you, you better pay attention to kind of those provisions. A robust outdoor illumination section dealing with lighting. Probably right now more robust than it needs to be, a bit more lengthy than I like such a provision to be, but really sets forth standards. And this outdoor illumination section, outdoor illumination regs in general, I think have been receiving increased attention. One, concerns about dark skies, concerns about excessive light shed off of properties, and then also just the emergence of new technologies, LED lighting, and then also just the fact that everything kind of lights up now. The digital screens on the gas pumps and so forth and so on. So being in the being in a position to more effectively set standards on lighting, I think, is a positive thing. You guys have a consolidated parcel provision in your regs right now that does allow kind of multiple parcels to be developed as of one. This is just, I think, a more direct and robust consolidated parcel provision. So this brings us to the last two sections, which are the sections I really encourage you to take a look at. They're where the most changes have occurred, the most new language or changed language have occurred in these regs. I believe the documents I sent you include two versions. One is clean, so you don't see all the revisions. The other version is with all the revision markings in place, so you can still see your language that was deleted out. The key things here with parking, I tried to stay true to the integrity of your parking regs, but at the same time make substantial changes. If you pay attention to kind of popular culture planning and so forth, parking there's kind of been a 180-degree turn on views of how to deal and manage with parking. We've seen communities eliminate minimum parking requirements and go to maximum parking requirements. We've seen communities eliminate parking requirements altogether. I don't really subscribe to either of those approaches. I think the maximums can be as harmful as minimums can be at times, and I don't think just getting rid of parking standards is a wise choice either. My point being, though, there's a lot of change going on here. Historically, we've overbuilt parking. One, we probably overbuilt it to begin with, but I think more notable is things have changed. Peak demand for parking is not what it used to be based on our more flexible lifestyles. I remember growing up as a kid, West Farms Mall, in the month of December, you couldn't find parking. It was overflowing. You go to West Farms Mall today at the week before Christmas, and there's no problem finding parking. Yes, you may be distanced, but you can find parking. It's not overflowing. There's still hundreds, if not thousands, of vacant spaces. That's due to the peak demand changed. If you go back 30 years ago, none of us were out drinking coffee at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Today, you walk into a coffee shop at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, and it's full of people. It's kind of like, where'd they all come from? And that's flexible work environments. My point being is the peak demand, the peak times that parking was occurring historically, those peaks have softened greatly, and therefore the maximum amount of parking that we previously wanted, or the minimum amount that we previously wanted, aren't needed anymore. So most regulations over-require parking. When I was planner in East Windsor, I remember my commission always yelling at me that Route 5 looked like a parking lot. And I remember I constantly yelled back at them saying, well, change the regulations. But every time I said, let's change the regulations, they said, no. What about that, worst case scenario with CVS right before Christmas and God forbid a car can't find a place to park? I was like, well, you maintain those standards and then you're going to look like a parking lot. So this regulation, key changes I tried to do is bring the standards back, scale them back to what is acceptable levels today. Provide a flexibility requirement in that if an applicant does a parking study and provide you guys with either industrial standards, and I cited sources that would be acceptable, or local examples, maybe surrounding towns of same sites, similar uses, and showing that, let's just say your regs are saying, 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. If they can come in with industrial studies or case studies locally that show that 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet is more than adequate, then it gives the ability to accept those studies in setting the standard through the site plan approval. Key change I did made in this, once again, it's not just you guys, it's other communities. I think it was a point in time when maybe your regulations were significantly updated, but there was a point in time where regulations were using employment levels to kind of guide the amount of parking needed. And I just think it's a disastrous approach in that. So say I come to you and I say, I'm opening a restaurant and we're going to have, or I'm opening XYZ business. Let's forget the restaurant. And we're going to have 20 employees. And your parking standards say we need to provide X number of spaces per employee, per shift, per yada, yada, yada. And you guys approve that, right? What happens tomorrow when I hire a new employee? Am I in violation, or did my site just become non-conforming? There's too much change in employment to actually set parking standards on them. So I think there's a couple provisions where I left an employment because I didn't have a better standard, but I tried to tie the parking standards back to gross floor areas based on categories of uses. And I did a carve out on the kind of warehousing distribution to, I called out processing facilities separate. So an example, we worked on behalf of the town of Bloomfield on a large distribution center, and it had it was like 700,000 square foot distribution center with a 300,000 square foot processing facility. The distribution center parking was minimal, 80 persons, top employment on the distribution side. It was the processing side where they were actually packaging food that had the huge numbers, because the employment numbers are much higher. So I carved out a provision for processing facilities separate from those other industrial uses. So I encourage you to go through those closely, think about them, and get comments and concerns back to me. And the last one, I'm just living in fear of introducing you to this. This is the toughest thing I've been doing since 2015 is sign regulations. There was a point in time when I was doing regulation updates, I always just kind of asked as part of the scope of work of, do you guys like your sign regulations? And if you said yes, I said, fine, let's not touch them. Because they've always been a landmine and communities are so tied to them. It's so hard to say, change this or change that. Then in 2015, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case called Reed versus the town of Gilbert, where the Supreme Court made very clear this concept of content neutrality. So previously, we believed that content neutral was that a sign regulation couldn't regulate the content of the sign. You couldn't tell Joe's Pizzeria that you didn't like the name Joe's Pizzeria, or you couldn't tell them that they couldn't add their hours of operations to the sign, that we stayed away from content. And that was kind of fine. But the Reed versus Gilbert case changed that, in that it interpreted sign content speech very different than we'd previously thought. And this is where, I hate to say this, I'm not picking on you, because once again, it's so many communities, but from a content neutrality standpoint, every other line in your sign regulations is violating the Constitution and the Reed versus Gilbert decision. And this is how it plays out, to explain it. If you say we regulate contractor signs and real estate sales signs and special event signs, then the Supreme Court has basically said you're regulating speech. You're differentiating between the speech of a contractor, in the speech of a realtor, in the speech of the Elks Club having a special event. That every time you call out that specificity of the kind of sign, you are engaged in regulating speech. And you're not being content neutral. So I know you guys have a lengthy section of your regulations that says, contractor sign for renovations in the residential district can be, 2 feet by 2 feet. And a real estate sign can be 2.5 by 3 feet. And this sign can be that, and that sign can be that. That's all now since 2015 in violation of constitutional protections of speech. So now, put yourself in my shoes. How do you write a regulation that regulates signs that can't call out the types of signs or the categories of signs? So there's a bunch of things, and I gave you language, the law firm's interpretation, so you would see this in this memo that I believe you received today. My apologies. I was writing notes for myself tonight, and I decided to turn it into a memo. And the court kind of gave a list of things that are content neutral: size, location, lighting, fixed messages versus scrolling messages, total number of signs per street mile, or we use kind of linear foot of facades, time limitations on advertising of event signs, and on versus off premise. That regulations that target those items are likely to be content neutral, provided you don't call out what the various events are, let's say, on the event signs. So my challenge, and you guys are the third community I've worked on this for, is how to rewrite a sign regulation that remains content neutral, but still allows you guys to regulate signs. So I really need to stress, you guys need to read this section. And you really need to read the residential sign section, because it's actually more challenging than the commercial district sections. Commercial district sections are relatively simple because it's just a commercial advertising sign. It's in the residential districts where you have all these quirky signs that we regulated but didn't think very much about. And where the quirkiness becomes the most challenging is then political signs, right? So when we say real estate sales sign, we can live with it, right? We'll struggle through it. We'll suck it up. When we say, remodelers, contractors sign, maybe we can struggle through that. When we say political sign, now it's kind of like, But the fact is, all these signs need to be treated equal. So the biggest change here is not necessarily, it is the uniformity across all these signs that appear in residential zones, but the biggest impact is ultimately to the political sign, that we can't call it out separate. It has to be regulated in a way that's similar to all the other signs. And that, I fear, from a community level perspective, is gonna create the greatest amount of angst. Because if you can only have one for sale real estate sign, right? You can't have 27 political signs, especially if you can't call them out separately. If I can't say contractor sign and I can't say political sign, right? Then the temporary sign provisions, it essentially becomes a temporary because all those signs are temporary. Remodeling's temporary, for sale's temporary, political's temporary. It all becomes about uniformity. So you guys need to really look closely at that section, and you need to, next time we meet to discuss this, get upset with me and push back on me, and we need to struggle our way through this and find a way to come up with a regulation that works. And I can tell you my receding hairline is directly related to sign regulations. Yes.
Again, I have a question in terms of, could we differentiate between, more permanent signs and temporary signs as, a way of controlling, how many or the size of whatever, and then base it upon the actual area that's associated with, the parcel that's distributing the sign? So that, again, a homeowner who's doing, remodeling can only have a certain size sign on his, lot based upon how big his lot is. If he has a 20-acre lot, then he can put up a billboard or whatever he wants to do.
Yep.
But, base it upon, something like that. And obviously, if we can separate the temporary signs from the permanent signs, then we could allow more area associated with temporary signs versus permanent signs.
Yeah, I think there are ways. And that's why I need you guys to question me and challenge me, and we need to have a discussion simply about this because you will spur thoughts. I was struggling with, one of the things I was struggling with as I was writing this, and just in you asking your question, you sparked a thought in my head that just helped me see maybe a way around it. And that is the variation in, just as an example, what I was struggling with is the variation in size of real estate leasing signs, for sale signs. This, pretty standard size out in the residential zones, and I've rarely come across a situation where someone's put up a 20-foot by 20-foot for sale sign on their house, right? But then when you get into the commercial districts, and when you have a big property, something like the Mass Mutual property, or you have a property that has frontage or visibility from something like 91, you see the commercial brokerage firms putting up very large signs or hanging the banner off the side of the building facing 91 that says for sale or for lease or whatever. We can make differentiations between commercial and residential. And we could probably, as you said, we could potentially come up with a metric that ties to lot size or to lot frontage or whatever to provide variation. I need to really think about these things and work them through. And the more you guys question me on this, the more it will force me to think, and the more creative ways we can maybe come up with to deal with this. But regardless of what we do, and even if in the end we end up in some gray areas, the biggest message I have for you tonight is these sign regulations need to change drastically, because as written, they open up constitutionality issues. And while that seems abstract, it could mean, worst case scenario, someone comes in for an application for something, you reject it. It included a sign as part of the site plan, and they appeal your decision, and they also take an additional appeal specific to the sign provision on a constitutional basis, which could then end up, unlike typical litigation with land use, which is remanded back to you guys to do over if you were bad, could end up in financial penalties to the municipality for, willfully violating laws. So that's worst case scenario. I'm not trying to scare you, but it's worst case scenario. So, yes.
On just what you were saying, the local, private, commercial signs, it seems like the litigation talked about more what you were just saying is what's on the sign and the content of the sign. So is that a bigger piece of it?
Well, content's always been something we're aware of. It's how content's been defined. That previously, we said realtor sign versus, contractor sign. And I believe your regulations have both those called out for a remodeler sign and a real estate for sale sign. And they have different size and standards to them, right? What basically this case has said is by saying contractor sign and saying real estate sign, you have differentiated between.
Speech part is going to be the bigger challenge rather than temporary or residential or commercial.
Right.
That's going to be,
Right.
it's kind of, we could sit down and figure out what's temporary, what's commercial, but it seems like this whole new speech piece is going to be
Yeah.
the heavy lift.
And if you look at the draft reg I gave you, and the reason why I said look closely at the residential section, that doesn't mean avoid the commercial sections, but the residential section is the area where basically I had to go through and think about what are residential signs, and almost other than signs that maybe have the name of the homeowner or the address for emergency services and so forth, other than those signs, every sign on a residential property is actually temporary. It's there for a period of time related to a specific event. So the provision I've drafted says that you can install such signs, such temporary signs, I think it was 2 weeks before a given event. And they can remain through the event and then must be removed in X amount of time after event. If you think about that, that applies equally to all types of events. So let me start with your remodeler. 2 weeks before he shows up to redo your kitchen, he can install his remodeling sign, and it can remain there through the remodeling. But once the remodeling's done, the sign has to go away. Same for the real estate sales. In advance of the property being listed for sale, 2 weeks in advance, they can put up a for sale sign. It can remain until the property's sold and then has to be removed. Political, same circumstance. 2 weeks before what I would say is the start of the primary, and we may have to define that. But when does the primary kind of officially start? Probably at the time that the ballot is cast by the voting system. But 2 weeks before the start of a primary, a sign can go up and can remain through the primary, but must be removed once at X amount of time after. And then the same again going into the election. So all of those things, regardless of what they were, are all temporary events. They can all be regulated in time sequence legally, and we can set standards for the size of signs for temporary events. Problem is you can't differentiate now between the size of a contractor's sign and a political sign and a for sale sign and the Elks Club's, holiday Mardi Gras sign or whatever that may be. And that's where my head spins around and around as I try and make my way through. So I've given you a first draft to look at, to consider, to get really upset about. And we're going to have to do a work session specifically related to this.
Can we limit quantity of signs? One of the issues with the political signs are basically you could have 10 signs on one property that say this, that have the same message, meaning, vote for John Smith, and they put 10 of them. They put a row of 10 of them up there. So can there be a limit on that? That only one one message that can be the same?
Yeah, that's my feeling is, and the way I've written it right now basically says one temporary sign per event per property.
Yeah.
And I know that runs right into the tradition of political signs. But if you want to be able to put up those 10 political signs, then you're going to have to write a provision that would also allow the contractor likely to put up 10 contracting signs. Mm-hmm. So I haven't figured a clear path through this yet. We need to think about it. We could probably have a different provision, call out a separate provision for corner lots, that maybe they're allowed signage on each corner, as we already call out special provisions for corner lots because they are unique and different. So that's somewhere where a flex could occur. once again, just the standard 2 foot by 2 foot political sign that you stick in on the little metal rail thing, right, that goes in the ground, versus the tradition of the highly visible corner lot that has the 4 by 8, piece of plywood painted up for that candidate. Right now, we can't, as I think my way through this, I don't see a path of allowing both. And unless you're going to allow the contractor to do the 4 by 8 or the real estate agent to do the 4 by 8, and I'm not sure you want those large brokerage signs in your residential zones. So this becomes challenging. The other thing is and this is, at the end of the day, this is not unique to you guys or to anyone. Political signs are a nightmare in every community, especially from a zoning perspective. And the political signs are always create violations. I tried in East Windsor. I used to send a letter to the chairs of both parties leading into election season saying, these are our sign regulations. Please consult them. Please abide by them. And any complaints received by this office are going to be directed to you. Because the last thing I wanted to do was be in the middle of a political nightmare of political signs. My gut tells me moving forward, political signs will persist in the way that they are, regardless of what your regulations say. But I think you have to go into that eyes wide open. So,
I thought political signs you couldn't limit. On
well,
a residential private lot.
That's something we should probably look into.
So you're telling me I have to take down my Trump flag? That ain't happening.
Well, no, and I'm not saying you have to take down your Trump flag. I'm not saying
Considered a political message,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So first off, I'm not saying you have to do that.
and I'm not saying I have a Trump
Right,
flag
no.
hanging, but what I'm saying is this is what you're opening up right
Yeah,
now.
well, that's the whole thing. So right now, and I'll just be honest with you, right now, your regulations have a provision in them that regulates flags. And you actually set a standard for kind of size of an American flag. And I think you have prohibitions on other kinds of flags. I don't have your regs memorized, so if I misspeak, please forgive me. Right now, that in and of itself is kind of scary ground, if you think about it. In the sense that, I can't put up a larger flag, or I can't put up my Trump flag, because right now your regulations constrain that. So I think, that comment, we have to go into this eyes wide open. We need to be realistic. I would stay away from the regulation of flags, period. Regardless of the content neutrality, it's kind of been my comment to communities, is just stay away from flags. Now, mind you, that was pre-modern times with things like Trump flags that have become contentious, regardless of what our views are. They just have. I know, actually, in my town, I watch on Facebook, there's this giant argument and debate going over this individual flying one of those flags. Side funny flag story. When I was in East Windsor, I don't know if you've ever heard this. Big Y, when they built that site, they came in after they got their CO and wanted to put up a flag. And big pole, I think the pole height's 70 feet, and a really huge flag. And I sat down and looked at our regulations, and they were ambiguous as to whether or not I could approve that sign permit. And after going back and forth, I approved it. The sign went up, the flag went up, I saw it, and I almost died when I saw the size of it, how it actually looked on the landscape. And I'm like, my commission is going to kill me. Ironically and sadly, days later, 9/11 occurred. My next we had a commission meeting that night that was canceled. 2 weeks later, we met again. And my commission raved on and on and on about how wonderful and great that big Y American flag sign was. And I was like, I skated through that one. So times change, contexts change, and these things are challenging. But my message to you tonight is, we've got a tough road ahead figuring out how to make it through these sign regulations. So, but I'm here to help you, and I'm here to figure out creative ways of doing it. It is.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to reiterate the fact that this Reed v. Gilbert case is national. That is not just a Connecticut.
No, I
is
understand.
happening
It was
all the
U.S.
way-
Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So I just want people to realize this is not just a local Connecticut thing.
I looked.
This is national. And this is happening in every town USA.
Yeah.
So,
understand.
And many towns have ignored it. Many towns have just dragged their feet until kind of said, next time we do our regs, we will address it. You guys, for better or worse, whatever, you've reached that point. We can't really go through your regs, update them, and ignore it. I would be irresponsible in doing that. So we got to figure it out. And we will. So
Okay,
thank you, guys.
thank you.
One thing, Lori, I need a copy of that memo. Oh, no, never mind. No? All right, great, thanks.
All set, thanks, Don.
Yeah, I'm all set if you guys are. Thank you.
We're good.
We'll see you again soon.
Chief got one.
Got it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, at this time, is there anybody out there who would like to speak to the commission about anything that is not currently on our agenda? If so, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing none. Bond releases. Jen, do we have any bond releases this evening?
No bond releases.
Thank you. Continued public hearings. Seeing none. New public hearings. Public hearing 301153 Manning Road, special permit and site plan review application. Mr. Secretary.
The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at their regular meeting on Thursday, June 24th, 2021, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following application. Public hearing 3011, 53 Manning Road. Special permit and site plan review application for a seasonal indoor winter farmers market. KBRC Realty, care of Walter Chip LeBlanc, owner applicant, map 34, lot 15, industrial I zone. Ken Nelson,
Here.
Linda DeGray,
Here.
Virginia Higley,
Here.
Frank Alimo,
Here.
John Petronella,
Here.
and Richard Suzak is here.
Welcome. State your name and address for the record, please.
For the record, Attorney Thomas Fahey, office at 487 Spring Street, Windsor Locks, representing the applicant, Chip Labont. And before I proceed, are you going to put up a site plan or anything on the thing there? Do you have one?
No, we weren't planning to do that. We would have needed
Does the
the,
commission? We have one
Trustee.
here, but I didn't know if you wanted for the audience to. In the old days, you had that thing that went both ways.
yeah. The commission should have copies of the site plan.
Do you all have one?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, the property, as you all know, is located on Manning Road, 53 Manning Road. And we, as you recall, we had 2 hearings, one in March, one in April, in which we discussed the text change to the regulations that this application is proceeding under. And that included the definition of a farmer's market and the inclusion of a specific section in section 6.20 that explained the regulatory purview of permitting farmers markets by special permit in Enfield, both inside and outside. And as I understand it, there's already been an approval of an outside farmers market at one of the breweries in town, I think in May, if I'm not mistaken. What we're here tonight for is the special permit review. And as you see, you have a site plan, which includes a floor layout and a parking plan. And I think your town planner, town planning staff has done an excellent job of summarizing the the application in terms of its compliance with the special permit requirement regarding parking. And it's interesting because listening to Don Poland, your planning consultant, and talking about parking and just in your first element, first agenda item this evening, it's actually illustrated by what we're doing here, and that is that the addition of the farmers market operating on the weekends, to the other requirements for the existing self-storage facility and the remaining empty space is all laid out on the zoning table, which appears on, is that page 1? I can't tell. Can you? Yeah. It's C-SP1, and you can see that the existing number of spaces that are used by the self-storage is 32, and the warehouse is which is empty now, right? The empty space is presently empty. In order to fulfill and have enough to fulfill that square footage, you need 134, and the Winners Farmers Market, based upon a retail standard, which is what, since the use is being considered to be a retail use, would require 167 spaces. Now, the self-storage is a 7-day-a-week operation and it requires 32 spaces. I think Chip, who's observed over the past year and a half that it's been open, and seldom more than 3 or 4 cars there at a time, but we still have to have the 32, and we've put the 32 in here. The way that we're going to satisfy the total demand is because the warehouse doesn't have a parking demand on the weekend. The trucks don't run and deliver on the weekends, and so those spaces are going to be used. We're using those spaces plus the additional spaces we're going to have for what they call truck parking, which is up against the building. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So those we're going to paint a different color stripe, so that there'll be enough parking should there be an event during this farmers market in which there was a demand for those spaces that'd be available to satisfy the command. And that's how we will satisfy the actual requirement. And as I think it was Jen pointed out in her review, her staff report, there's also a provision in the your regulation that allows your commission to, on a case-by-case basis, I say, to reduce this total demand based on the total requirement based upon the specific circumstances of the uses that are on that property. And I noticed that there were that you've received reports from police and fire that don't seem to have any objections to the site plan that we submitted and the application that we submitted. And I know that the health department has been contacted and sent copies of this, and I don't know that they have responded yet to that, and nor has the building department responded. Obviously, any work that we do in setting up the farmers market has to be approved by the building department and inspected, and we will consider to do that. So I don't know whether they didn't respond because they didn't have any objections, or they just didn't get around to it or what it was, but that seems to be the case. And I have Chip here tonight to answer any specific questions about the operation. I believe that the plan itself, done by certified engineers who have reviewed your special permit requirements, site plan requirements, I believe it complies. And in order to make this a focused presentation, we'll try to answer any questions that you may have on the plan.
Commissioner Suzak.
I have a question. In terms of looking at your plan, and I noticed that there's 5 porta potties or portalets to be utilized. And the duration of this winter's market is from September to May. So if I was to visit your farmer's market or there in January and the weather is 20 below zero, and all of a sudden I get this urge that, I need to visit a facility. Is there any possibility that you have interior, indoor facilities that would be available, for extreme weather events? So
there are indoor facilities inside, and they will be used, whether it's cold or not. But there's not. This is more of a convenience item because you know how you go to a ball game and sometimes there's a line coming out. If you go to a hockey game in Hartford, and when it's a period change, you might have to wait to get in there. So what we're trying to do is to accommodate the people and make it.
And again, I don't have a problem in September. October when it's still nice out. But sometimes, it becomes very uncomfortable. I go to a lot of job sites, and if you have to use a facility in the middle of the winter, it's not that easy to get.
I guess it depends on how bad you got to go. If you can wait till a person finishes indoors, you're good.
Well, the thing is, I guess there's always facilities that have to be available, and I'm just making a point that it has to be comfortable for the user, and obviously if somebody doesn't want it, doesn't like the facilities, they won't come and use your place. But you might get more users to come and actually visit the market if it has the facilities that they anticipate.
You want to comment on that?
Sure. So there is a handicap toilet that is shown on the interior plan. But what's more is, and I didn't realize this until just now, on the far west end of the building, I mean, in order to be able to see this, I didn't understand why the architects did not show. There's an additional restroom that was built for the, Hallmark employees, and I don't remember whether it's 3 or 4 stalls. It was a ladies' room in the Hallmark warehouse, and that's on the far west end of the building. So there's those ladies' room, a handicap in the east side. It's clearly noted HC unisex toilet, and so the others are supplemental. So there's definitely interior as well as the porta potties.
I would like that to be part of the approval process in terms of if as a condition possibly.
Yeah, I just actually said that if you want to put that as a condition of approval, that the spaces that are inside the building remain open during the farmers market.
Oh, that's the intent.
That's the intent.
Yeah.
You can put that as
It's difficult, to transition from an intent to reality.
No, I appreciate that. Omission on our
what we
part.
don't want to do is have
Yep.
it, misconstrue that, I really didn't mean that.
No, I'm happy with that as a condition. We had always intended to use it that way. I mean, just as sort of coming at it in the same way that you did, which is to say it's a more appealing place to visit if they have restrooms.
How many stalls are in that building inside in this space?
You don't
Not
remember if
restroom,
it's 3 or
stalls.
4. I don't remember if it's 3 or 4 in
right.
that restroom.
No, in the entire farmers market space.
Either 4 or 5.
All right.
So there's one handicap, which is separate.
Yeah.
That's a separate lavatory. And then there's another, as I said, a women's room. And I don't know if there's 3 or 4 stalls. in
Okay,
there.
so call it 3. So condition of approval is there's to be 4 interior.
Well, I think that, potentially they might turn into unisex rather than, women's room and
Well, you can't. If there's 3 stalls in 1 bathroom,
It's not a college dorm.
yeah, you can't. How are you going to feel if I go in the bathroom and your wife's in there and she's in the next stall?
I've seen that at corporate.
Yeah, well, this ain't corporate California. This is Connecticut. So, and you're right, it's not a college dorm. So, 4 public stalls to remain inside the building,
Are we
open
gonna
to the public.
Different, open to the public. the
Open, oh,
entire-
absolutely.
Open to the entire public. However they want to achieve that, we don't care.
Well, open to the public that's there for that use.
Right.
That's our desire as well. I mean, we want it to be a
So
nice
that-
place to visit, and the porta potties on the outside are simply supplemental.
Convenience.
Yes. I mean, nobody's going to choose.
In September, they're convenient. In
Right.
January, not so much.
No.
All right. All set?
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Go ahead.
Just curiosity, this farmer's market, are you going to have like permanent stalls for these people that are bringing in their crafts so they can leave them there all week and not have to lug them back and forth so there's fewer trucks going up and down the road? I'm just curious.
It will be secure. If we're talking about somebody leaving their merchandise out, I would think that that's not such a desirable situation. If somebody had a locker, now we are a self-storage facility, so they're welcome to rent a self-storage unit and leave their stuff there. More, I think, to the point is their tables. Okay, they're set up, so while they're bringing back and forth, whether it's fruits and vegetables or arts and crafts and the like, it would be totally up to them. I can't imagine that they'd really want to leave their stuff out, but it's our intent is to have the same vendors there week in and week out to the extent that that's possible. And if they want to leave their stuff there, it'll be locked and secure.
I was just curious, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. I just have one. I'm not a fan of limiting businesses, and I know we discussed this before, to days and times of operation. Due to your parking limits, I understand what you're doing. You're using the closure of the warehouse on the weekend to use their parking spaces because it's going to be vacant. So there, I would agree to, just Saturday and Sunday for the farmer's market. But to limit your hours, I mean, Sunday you have from 11 to 5. I mean, the law is 10 a.m. you could open. And right now, it may be nothing, and I know you've said, your intent is not to be here and run this nonstop, but I would say that their hours of operation should be a normal, like 8 to 5 Saturday, 10 to 5 on Sunday, and he can choose what hours he wants to open. But, I mean, to me, limiting a business to hours, and that's what we're doing here, it's not right. And I understand he wants that, but by us putting it in writing, suppose he's open an hour late because there's a bunch of people, he had a great day and they're moving furniture out and the neighbors get upset. He's got no leeway. So if he closes at 3 and they're there till 4, he's still within the legal rights to be there.
Well, you make an excellent point, Mr. Chairman. I think he may choose to operate it from 11 to 4, but I think you're absolutely correct in not hamstringing it in the approval, because there may be a time where it seems like the people that go there would like to come earlier, and some may come late. Maybe there's some come afternoon and some come before. So then he can adjust it without having to come back and modify it again. So if that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
And he can advertise it as 11 to 4, whatever it may be, and if it gets going right.
Yeah.
He
I mean,
may
Sundays,
want
I
to-
agree, residential street, 10 a.m. I mean, that's fair to the neighbors, that's fair to everybody, but, it gets into, you got vendors there setting up at 9 a.m. on a Saturday the neighbors are like, you're open for business and you're not supposed to be, and it just creates, and we know the turmoil on the street, so I think you've dealt with enough of it, and I'm just trying to eliminate one part of it. So I would ask the commission that we make that part of this. Okay. All right, any other questions? At this time, I'd like to open up public hearing. How did I lose my agenda? Oh, public hearing 3011 53 Manning Road. To the public, anyone here who would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Going for the first time? Going for the second time? And going for the third time? Seeing none, how would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we close public hearing 3011.
Motion's made, is there a second? Motion's made and seconded. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The public hearing is closed. How would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to approve public hearing 3011, dated June 24th, 2021, as prepared by the Planning Department, with the 25 total conditions and the 2 site-specific conditions, with the affirmation that we are going to be adding another specific site commission regarding toilet facilities, that there shall be a minimum of 4 total stalls available for the use of the public.
The general public.
Correct, the general public, and I guess your vendors and whoever, they can all share. And also that, in terms of, to modify the hours of operation to be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on on Saturday and Sunday.
10 a.m. on Sunday, 10 to 5 on
Okay,
Sunday.
10 to 5 on Sunday and 8 to 5 on Saturdays.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded by Commissioner Alimo. Roll call, please.
Ken Nelson.
4.
Linda DeGray.
4.
Virginia Higley.
4.
Frank Alimo.
4.
John Petronella.
4.
And Richard Suzakis, 4.
All in favor, none against? Congratulations. Good luck. When's your opening?
September, October, not sure. As you know, this is a little while in the making, and I really want to tell you, we want to make this something that Enfield's going to be proud of. And I mean, that's really sincerely a really fun town activity that's creative, that you're going to be enthusiastic to bring your neighbors and guests to. So thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Other business. I'm sorry. Okay, new business, special permit 1863, 562 Enfield Street, site plan review, application for facade updates and minor site improvements associated with Dunkin' Donuts restaurant and drive-through. Welcome, gentlemen.
How you doing?
Good. State your name and address for the record, please.
Jason Caetano.
Welcome.
CJ Caetano.
Welcome. Tell us what you'd like to do.
Well, we got some changes on the outside of the building relating to colors.
Yep.
So that's what we're here for, to get the approval on those colors we submitted. It's pretty similar to the Elm Street location. It's going to be similar, but the gray is a little lighter. It's not the same gray tone that's on the back side. It's more of a electrical box color going to be, and then a steel beam that's running along the middle of the building with that, I don't know what it's called, those slats going down, the different colored slats, the brown, orange, and white.
Great. Did you bring any coffee samples or donuts, or, I mean?
This is past my bedtime, I don't know.
Your dad's Carlos?
Yes.
Yeah. Is he still involved in the
He's
business?
still very involved in the
Yeah.
business, yeah.
I worked for your dad and your mom
Oh, you did?
back in 82, 83, when you were across the street at the old place.
I hope he treated you well.
Your mom was a very tough lady to work for. Your dad was a little more easygoing.
He's the opposite with us, so.
Yeah. Questions?
Is this the new corporate design of Dunkin' Donuts? Is that
Yeah,
what
it's
they're pushing out there?
it's their Omni Next Gen concepts.
Personally, I don't like it.
Yeah.
No
We have
disrespect,
very
but
little say in the
yeah,
change that
I mean,
Dunkin'
it's kind
wants.
of, I don't know. I like those snappier looking buildings, but
Yeah, we're more traditional too, but we
Yeah.
gotta.
you got to
update.
stick with what they tell you. yeah.
Contractually obligated to do it, so we gotta do it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're
Now,
welcome.
you own the one on Elm Street here too, just
No,
past
that
the
would
highway?
be, that's our uncle, Tony.
Right, that's what it's gonna kind of look
It's gonna
like.
kind of look like that, yeah.
I have to agree with Commissioner Alimo. I think your building down here has it all over that
Yeah.
building there.
We're not really doing structural on the outside, so we're not gonna do the little peaks he put on his, that's not gonna happen. So.
Right. You're just doing some paint and stuff
Just some
like
paint, minor work on the outside.
that. Yeah.
Some artist in the room or just up somewhere at corporate or, I don't know, seeing something I'm not.
Okay.
We can always deny it, and then we can keep what we have. you
No, we
know.
can't deny it based on color, right? Didn't we just say that?
They didn't bring any samples.
I don't
so
think
we
they want to
can.
spend the money to do this either,
No.
but they have to.
Right.
You know? I think McDonald's are starting to look pretty, they don't look like a kid's place anymore.
Yeah.
So,
It's a new thing.
all right, gentlemen,
He's changing.
ladies,
Fast.
that's it? No more questions? How would you like to proceed? Rich has
Mr.
been on vacation
Mis-
too long.
Yeah, I've been on vacation, I'm in La La Land. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the special permit site plan review for site plan review 1863, to conform with the presentation or the documentation that we received in our packet for this week, June 24th, 2021.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ken Nelson,
4.
Linda DeRay,
4.
Virginia Higley,
4.
Frank Alimo.
4?
John Petronella,
4.
and Richard Suzak is 4.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We'll remember samples next time.
Tell your dad I said hello if he remembers me.
Yes.
Yeah, no more donuts.
We have them, but we don't say that we have it anymore.
You're still selling donuts though, right?
Yeah,
So-
still a lot of them. I'm not happy about the name change, though.
This could be Duncan, so I don't.
Yeah. I don't know.
Is that all right, guys?
Good night. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, other business discussion regarding town-owned property at 52 Prospect Street, AKA Buildings and Grounds Facility.
Yes, thank you. So the town is, if you, I'm sure you've heard that they've been going through a consolidation period, and they're bringing buildings and grounds over to Public Works campus. So we are looking to sell it. Unfortunately, the use that is there, which is considered municipal, so it's been there since, hold on, let me find my. Right,
still
so
is.
this has been there since 1923. The town has owned it since March 13th, 1925. And it was always permitted as a municipal use. So, but the municipal use that happens to be there is buildings and grounds. They basically do landscaping and mowing, snow blowers. They've got small lawn equipment, plows, fencing and other items, storage of signs, storage of sand, loam, gravel. muster area for 22 employees, including locker rooms, administration area, and vehicle storage outside and inside trailers in the large building. So if that were to be sold, if the municipal use goes away, that's what's left behind, is that type of facilities. But the problem is that is not allowed in the TD2 zone. So, and the uses in the TD2 zone are very, very limited, as that was by design, that you pretty much wanted it to be residential. But this has been here since, kind of in its current state, since the 1930s. So the question is, if we sell it, then somebody's going to probably have to knock it down and just put in some sort of residential or a medical facility, or there's so very few things that are actually permitted in the TD2. So the, excuse me. So we're just kind of doing a query amongst yourselves as to whether you would be amenable to creating some sort of text amendment that would allow this use there. The one thing we were thinking is you could have a landscaping or contracting storage area, provided you have an acre or more, well, because this is just over an acre, 1.07. 1.07 acres. The alternative would be to do some other, we don't necessarily want to allow this just anywhere, because it is kind of the residential area, but the impact of this is accepted, I guess, is the best way to say it, because it already exists. So if the town decides to abandon this, which is their goal, then it's no longer a municipal use, and any other use is pretty much not going to want that property as in its current state.
Why couldn't we put that in the SPP zone like we did the school in Blair Manor? I talked to Jen about that the other
Does it have to
day.
be abandoned for 2 years?
There's a building size requirement in the SDD zone, and there's also a requirement that it be vacant for 24 months.
So this one, so we'd have to wait 2 years to do that.
I'm just trying to get around.
Yeah. So what if we were to do something like create a SDD zone in Thompsonville District that, for adaptive reuse, that doesn't have a time requirement or a size requirement?
All right, one more.
We're just thinking out of the box
Right,
here.
and
So
I have one more that goes with this. Directly behind the facility is house number 11-13 Thompson Court. And I went on Vision Appraisal today, the town website. It's not listed. And the house is there. It's imploded. The roof is inside the house. It's been vacant forever. Who owns that structure, and how come the town hasn't done something about it? Or does the town own that structure?
can you look that up? She's got the GIS up. Just a second.
You can look at the picture and see the roof's down.
Yeah, but she can find out who owns it.
No.
What does it say?
I went through the whole street. I do this every day,
She said
Jimmy.
11-13.
Something's not right with the house. But it's a big parcel, and it abuts this.
So
You're talking about on the west side of
Oh.
on the west side of Thompson Court? Because Thompson's
it
Court
isn't, so
goes,
It does show
the answer is it's not town owned.
It's privately owned.
Yeah.
So how come the town hasn't done anything?
My best guess is nobody complained about it.
I mean, it's
So-
a safety. The roof is inside the house.
Is it obvious from the street?
Look through the windows.
I don't know.
No, I'm just
Oh,
saying.
look through the windows, so.
No. Driving down the road, when you look, the house is up a
Yeah.
little. You can see right out the window, right out the roof, and you see the roof down inside
Okay.
the house.
So, I mean, certainly we can look into that. It's usually what happens is somebody puts in a C-click fix, and then, we become aware of things. The fact
there-
that it happens to be next door to a municipal building, I don't know why it wasn't noticed.
Well, and the reason I was asking is because if we merge the two properties together, I mean, even still, Thompson Court is a very difficult street for 2 lanes to pass. So, I mean, maybe the town considers running Thompson Court straight through this property up out onto Spring Street. And that'll alleviate a lot of the traffic, fire safety. I mean, how do you guys ever get a ladder or a truck down there?
We did it, but it's tough. Really difficult, like you said.
And then take the remaining parcel and sell it off as residential. But I was hoping that house was part of it because that gives you a lot more frontage on Thompson Court.
Ken, I don't see the house that you're,
It's right behind it, towards the railroad tracks.
okay.
So as you're
It's like an
looking at it to
L-shaped
the
lot.
left,
No.
See it? Right here.
Where you go around the corner there?
Yeah.
Where those garages are. There's a bunch of garages there
No,
as
the
well?
garages, it's between the garages and our property, Frank. It's an L-shaped lot right there.
All right, I got it. Yeah.
See the black lines in the roof?
Yeah.
That's the roof inside the house.
the cats must like it.
And it don't look like it burnt, don't look like it just looks like it collapsed. And the garage that's behind it looks like it's about to go down
Ready to
too.
go.
So it's definitely a safety issue. But, I mean, my question, I guess I would try to send it back to the town council,
It's Thompson.
is discuss possibly bringing Thompson Court through out to Spring Street. Go ahead, Rich.
The only thing I can see is that, then all of a sudden the town's spending more money to put in a road and making more improvements, drainage possibly, on-street parking. I guess I don't have a problem leaving it as a residential area, only because the density of the residences around there is quite large in terms of, the lots are small, and to allow, again, we always think that let's be sensitive to the people who are in the vicinity of where we're making these changes. And when it is your backyard, and your backyard's only 10 feet wide, and all of a sudden we allow some, industrial or some,
Not so friendly.
not so
neighbor.
friendly neighbor, and he has a diesel truck, and he runs his diesel truck, and he might have equipment and whatnot, and he runs his equipment, and all of a sudden you get all this noise and possibly some pollution. So and the thing is, if we can encourage somebody to develop it as a residential area, an apartment building, possibly a couple of stories, and and again, I'm not sure if it could be mixed use or whatever, but at least keep it a residential area so that who's ever buying it has to realize that it is a residential area, and possibly they might want to gut some of the existing buildings that are there. I'm not sure what condition they're in.
No, the building's got to go.
The entire site would have to be leveled.
All right. Well, again, like I said, I haven't gone through the site at
Right,
all.
which would deem it worthless by the time
Right.
you spent the money to tear down
Yeah,
the
but-
structures.
But
So essentially, appraisals are showing that if we keep it as is and we can sell it for that use, it's got a bit of value, but if we have to tear everything down, we won't be able to sell it for anything, so,
What
Right,
about
the
the
vacant land
Yeah.
isn't worth anything.
well,
but
it
ultimately,
depends on how vacant it is.
if there's improvements on it, then all of a sudden we can collect taxes on it too. So it's one of those kind of win-win situations where right now the
What
town
improvements?
what?
What improvements?
Well, if you knock the building down and you build something.
Yeah, but you got to put dollars and cents to that, Rich. The cost to demo all that property and clean it and then build a multifamily structure, we, the town, would be paying a developer to take this property.
Right.
That's why just the idea, and I don't know if anybody's discussed it or thought of it on the council, but Thompson Court is a problem road. We could solve two problems You know, and I'm not saying that I'm making that a condition, but they may say, you know what, that's not a bad idea. Who knows? But something's got to be done with this property. If you want it residential, then it's residential. We're going to put it out for sale. Whoever buys it is going to assume the cost of tearing all this down and cleaning the property, which a property like this in Thompsonville that's residential, that's not residential right now, the cost to transform that, $500,000 by the time you demo this building, clean it up, and then build a multifamily, say you built a 4-family there, you know the price of materials and everything.
But I guess the alternative is that we would be allowing, you know, some outside use to take over, you know, again, sort of a non-conforming use in a residential zone. And the thing is, you know, again, I don't want to say that, you know, or dictate how somebody's going to do something. You know, it's amazing how inventive people get when they get the opportunity to possibly make a dollar. How, you know, they
No doubt.
They might turn around and say, oh, yeah, I can do something with that building, regardless of how you think it's not transformable. But that somebody has an idea that, okay, maybe I could do something with that. And, you know, and you know, maybe it turns into a restaurant, or maybe it turns into a bar, or maybe, you know, it's something along those lines. But you know, and again, if we at least keep it residential, it doesn't necessarily, you know, transform it into some kind of a, you know, outside use type of thing.
So the key, I agree with what you're saying, Rich. Right now, they have a golden neighbor. The town is going to be very respectful of the people around them, backup alarms, all of that stuff. So they know they have a good neighbor now, and it's worked since 19 whatever. Would you be open to listening to proposals? Say the town got a buyer, and the buyer submitted to us that they wanted to put whatever, we don't know. But if it was a lesser use or something, because I agree with you 100%. Somebody's going to buy this, try to cram in as much as they can, landscaping or whatever, and it's not going to work. I'm on board 100%. But I also don't want to devalue the property to where it's a negative value, where, let's put it out there. I mean, the Thompsonville Fire Department, that finally came through with something that looks very promising. Let's see what the ideas are. The Skidco School.
Yep.
Same thing.
Again, I'm on board for that, you know, but I don't think that right now we'd be looking at a zone change, you know, at this point. You know, and in terms of keep it whatever it is.
Where we would agree to be open.
Correct.
To ideas that could possibly require a zone change.
Correct. Right. It's predicated upon the presentation that we get
Absolutely.
for that use.
Yep.
Fine. I'm
Go
with
ahead,
that.
Jenny, I'm sorry.
I don't know, that's okay. I like Ken's idea about possibly looking into acquiring that property. Maybe we can take it by eminent domain or something, but not much money, and then just having that little road. That would be a big improvement for that area. If not, then I would not want to see, landscaping to me is just a glorified smaller construction. I think that you're right, they're going to cram everything they can into it. It's going to be big mess. So I'd rather see something with less impact, like I don't know, a little machine shop or some kind of a piping shop, or just something that has less impact. And if you can't find somebody like that, then I'd rather see it nice multifamily put in there, you know, like a triplex or something. So that's how I feel about it. And I think we have too many zones. I think every time we have a challenge, we go create a zone for it, and it's getting to the point where it's like,
Right.
how many zones are we going to have here?
Commissioner Alaimo.
Laura, so right now the zoning is what? Right. It's already residential.
It's TE2, which is all residential.
Okay.
Sorry, we're going through the permitted uses, basically anything from single family to senior residential development.
No.
That's it. There, you can't have
Single family or senior residential development?
single family, two family, 3 to 4, assisted living community residences, housing for elderly and senior. residential.
I thought in that
Those are-
zo- in that
Those are the
zone-
only, oh wait, I'm
Don't we
sorry.
have don't we have a new height
Municipal use and Parker Playground.
in the residential piece in that zone? Isn't there a new, more relaxed height piece?
We're
Or,
not talking about height, we're talking about
no, but I'm thinking
uses.
about apartments.
Well, yeah, apartments are allowed there, but
Okay, but you
that's,
said,
so,
did you say just two-family?
4 family.
I just said single, 2, 3 to 4 family, mixed-use business resident, oh, nope, that's not even allowed. Assisted living, community residences, housing for elderly, and senior residential. So actually, 5+ unit residential
Right.
even, isn't even permited.
So again, it goes down to the cost.
So,
You're going to do
but
all that
those are
work
the
just to
only
put 4
uses.
units.
But, I mean, Commissioner Suzak was saying, maybe it turns into a restaurant or something. We don't even allow that in that zone. There is nothing allowed in that zone
But
except for
that's-
residential and municipal.
But, so, I think we're, Ginny, John, are you on board with listening to ideas? Okay. Frank?
Yeah,
So I think you have consensus from us, Lori, that, they can put, and discuss it with the council, they can put it out for sale. We're open to ideas and suggestions from potential buyers, but it's not gonna be a landscaping company or something like that, because they're out all hours of the night with their backup alarms, in and out. It just won't work there.
Even
So,
if they are now.
right. So,
That's what I'm saying, is the only benefit to keeping it the same, if we could, is the community around it is already used to that. It's
We're
not
trying
like
to make-
it just occurred. It's been there since 1930s.
We're trying to
So-
make Thompsonville nicer. We're trying to upscale it, and we're talking about doing all these great
Okay.
things. And if we keep doing the same thing over and over, then that's not an improvement.
Okay.
Got one more thing.
So basically, you're saying if somebody wants to purchase it and make it something different, you're open to listening.
Less
But-
impact.
like I said,
but remembering that the only things that are allowed are residential uses.
but we would entertain a zone change or something to make it an adaptable use. But we want to hear what the use is before we go and change a zone that allows, like last meeting.
Right.
So bring your ideas forward. Let's listen to it. I mean, like I said, the Thompsonville Fire Department, that went through a landscaping company that was running out of there that shouldn't have been running out of there. And finally, all these years later, somebody came in with the perfect
Yeah.
opportunity for it. And, maybe this could be a business incubator down there or something, small little mom and pop stores, cheap rent, because let's face it, it's not a high dollar property. And you'd be able to use the existing structures that are there that make it more feasible. So until we hear,
Deal with the town subject to planning and zoning
Yep.
approval.
Yeah. Okay. But, so you'd be open to some sort of adaptable reuse regulation or a text amendment or something like that? but
basically
you
the
don't
same
wanna see
thing
a
that
landscape
STD
company.
zone is,
Yeah.
but it's not an STD zone. I hate saying STD.
It's SDD.
DD.
Oh, SDD. Oh, Jesus.
So,
Can you delete the last 30 seconds, please?
okay.
Commissioner
So,
Liefeld.
but the general consensus is you don't want it to see a landscape business, you want a lesser use. Okay.
I mean, who knows? Kelly Fredette could buy it and put offices down there for their shop.
I went to a little diner, breakfast, lunch diner, that was put in a cafeteria in an old school. Plus, they had regular office, like realtor office and accountant office. And then they had the gym they used for the seniors for their exercise. I mean, it was a great reuse of an old building. So, I mean, but again, what I'm saying is, you never know, somebody might want to come up with different ideas to have this building reused for something. It doesn't always have to be what we think. They can put a little elbow grease into it and bring it up. So,
I mean, Kelly Fredette's acquiring everything down there, so, and there's buildings, watertight buildings down there for interior kitchen cabinets.
yeah.
I know somebody who buys a lot of cabinets off of them.
Yeah, so, yeah, we actually thought about, seeing if he'd be interested as well.
But see,
so.
that's what I mean. So they would come in and, or the town, and just let us know
Yeah.
what they're gonna do with it. Kelly Fredette closes at 5 o'clock except on Thursday nights, so it would be a much lesser use. No weekends, no nights, no snow plowing,
Okay,
so.
okay. All right.
Commissioner Alamo.
Thank you. So back to what Chairman Nelson was saying. So piece of it has to be, we're willing to look at zoning. Because my vision is for that, sitting on two of the previous committees for Thompsonville, dense residential development. And I don't know I don't remember the maximum story height, we can go there. But it does have two entry points. There's I think a little work on the Thompson Court entry would make that access there better, and then you got the access on Prospect. So I would like to personally see a dense residential development, and some of the studies that we've had that the town paid for in recent years have talked about starting to go up and not out because of the way Thompsonville's characteristics are. If you go up high enough, you'll have some apartments seeing the river. So it's got to be that we look at a zone change. And I'm all for looking at entertaining anything, but the zone has to change where it could be developed, and the town could make the maximum amount of money on the land when they sell it.
That's not
And
our purview. That's not our purview.
Well, as a taxpayer, no.
It's not our purview, Frank. Finances,
Okay, I think I've got my marching orders to report back.
so hopefully
Sorry,
they
I
see
have
that
my,
we're trying to work
I've
with
got my
them.
marching
and-
orders.
Well, if you look, like I said, if you look at some of the older studies that talked about going up.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
SP, Commissioner Correspondence.
I have two.
Go ahead.
First off, what is going on with the used tire guy up the state line? Every Saturday, he's got his balloon man on the sidewalk in front of his store. I mean, it's on the sidewalk. It's kind of near the bus thing. And I've done a C-click fix. You said he was very cooperative. Next Saturday, guess what's out there? Following Saturday, guess what's out there? It's not cooperative.
There was an A-frame sign out there today.
Yeah, well, this is a big balloon guy that's got to be about 10 feet, and he's right on the sidewalk by the street. And the wind blows, and, oh, they've got pictures. No. They've got pictures, and somebody else has sent pictures, so it's not just me being a crazy lady.
We run into this problem a lot on the weekends when all of the wacky, wavy, inflatable guys come out and the flags and the all kinds of things come out on the weekends. I mean, I live in town, I drive around, I see it, but, ultimately the ZEO, you can send pictures, but he tends to take action on what he sees. And so when things happen on the weekends, it's like difficult.
but-
He does drive through Enfield sometimes on the weekends and sees things, but I mean, it is off hours for him, but we'll try to figure it out and we'll talk to
This isn't on his
the
property,
owner.
this is on
The sidewalk.
the right-of-way.
I'm surprised the police haven't said something.
Yeah, and then the second thing is what's going on at the Pride Station? I'm sorry, they tore half of your old building down. Still, the other half is there.
Moving on.
What's going,
as-
have they come in with anything?
Yeah, we approved a whole
No, we
thing.
didn't.
Yes, we did, Linda.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
They're building a Pride.
They're starting construction.
I was just wondering because it was, how many years ago did we approve that?
They were here a couple months ago for an extension.
All right.
We approved it a year ago. They came in a month ago, maybe.
Yeah, I believe it was
And we
approved in
extended it.
I feel like it's
2018.
been longer.
It's Pride what? Pride
Yeah.
sandwich shop or something like
Yeah, but I
that?
So the history of that was that they had come in 2016 for projects, and then they had, I believe they withdrew or something, or maybe, I don't remember if they were
But
withdrew.
there was a traffic study that
Right,
they.
and then in 2018, they came back again with a bigger picture and new people doing their plans and all of that, and then the commission approved it, and they did come in for an extension. They had spent a lot of time dealing with OSTA, so it
Yeah.
was
With what?
OSTA, the Traffic Control Authority
Oh,
for the
Because
state.
it's the two states.
So,
I was just
They-
wondering if they've come in with a plan yet to you guys.
well, we're still waiting on their final plans, so.
Okay.
And then
No,
they
I
will
was
have to
just-
post bonds, but we did let them go forward with demolition, because that's more of a
It
building
actually
department.
looks to me, Linda, like they tore down 100% of the front building because it's all of Connecticut. The back building at the garage door, to the left of the garage door,
Is a mess.
is in Connecticut. To the right from that, and the garage door to the Pride Station is all Mass. So maybe they didn't get their permits to rip down Massachusetts or Long Meadow yet, and that's why the back portion of the building is still
standing.
there.
Yeah, I was like,
There's a red tape line right down the floor, and the state came in, and all fireworks had to be so far on that line because they weren't legal in Mass, but they were legal in Connecticut.
no, I just, and they cleaned up the mess and the.
Absolutely.
And then it's the big, whatever, I always say it's the wrong thing, and John.
Excavator.
It's the excavator. That's gone, so I was just
Oh,
wondering.
it was there today.
It's gone this afternoon.
Oh, all right.
So,
They probably needed a DOT traffic permit as well, right?
But they tore half the building down and they're done, cleaned up and gone.
Yeah.
The building is back building, original block.
You wouldn't need a DOT permit to demo, but for the construction and to go forward with the improvements, you need a DOT permit. But and DOT won't look at it unless they got P&Z approval, correct?
Yeah.
So, and DOT approval can take a long time.
yeah. No, I was
Right.
just,
That's what's holding it up.
No, her question is, why did they tear half the building down and not the other half?
yeah. They've got the front half gone.
And I think
Cleaned up.
the two states have a big part, yeah.
I was just wondering if they came in with a real plan.
What did
Yeah.
you think of my decorations? Because you can look inside and
I
see the
thought they were
faux
just
painting.
amazing, Kenny. You were just amazing decorator.
All set?
That's it.
Anyone else? Commissioners? I have to ask, correspondence and commissioners' correspondence.
I don't quite know, but I think correspondence is supposed to be, items maybe that we want to report to you, but then there's also Director of Development Services report, so it's a little redundant there.
Right, because what you just said, I would see under Director of Development. So can we remove one of them?
It's in the bylaws, so we can update the bylaws to take that out of there, and I guess. in the
Rich, do
meantime,
you
take
know
it out.
why? You're the secretary, you wrote this stuff.
Again, I think that correspondence is information that staff is giving to us, and commissioners' correspondence are
given to them.
information that we're giving to staff. So I
Director-
think that's the difference between the two.
Okay.
So, since you were talking about it, what is it that you look for from the Director of Development Services?
A motion to adjourn?
No, I'm being completely serious, actually. It's like, so are you looking for what's happening in town? Are you looking for what we've been discussing with potential clients? What is it that you're actually looking to hear?
I enjoy finding out what's happening in the town and what the department's doing, because you guys are doing a lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
it's nice that we know what you're, not that we know what you're doing, but it's nice to hear what you're doing.
It's,
Yeah.
being in the real estate side of things, and I think John will understand this, it's hard for you to disclose when a large brand comes in discussing
Yeah.
potentially leasing Macy's and picking your brain for ideas. For you to come in here and breach that confidentiality that you don't have with them, but they want it because somebody else could steal their lease or something. And that makes it very difficult for you to report to us in public. So I understand that side of it, and you, John, you got a lot riding on confidentiality. So I would love the idea of what's coming, but that's where I think she's limited.
I only wanted to hear what they're doing in the office, not what meetings they're having with what people, what projects they're working on, like Thompsonville, anything new going on in Thompsonville. Just a brief overview of anything that they're able to share with us. I'd like to know what's going on at the mall. But
Well,
I can't
that's
have-
different.
No,
That's
I
different.
can't have it.
Anything that they can share with
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
because a lot of what they're
Yeah,
doing
that's what I want.
is people calling, picking their brains. Hey, can we do this? Pride just sold, and we want to,
Yeah.
instead of doing the sandwich shop, we.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
So
don't want to know anything that I shouldn't know.
trust me, nobody wants to know more about the mall than me, but that ain't going to happen until something happens.
Well- So,
Yeah. Or lease or.
so for my report, I will tell you that there are still community gardens available if anybody wants to rent them. Pass the word. We've got the farmers market is running every Sunday now. So that through October. We've been working on, coming up with information for bonding. I just interviewed somebody for the third property maintenance officer, and they have tentatively accepted, so hopefully we'll have 3 people down there again.
For what?
The property maintenance officers, Blight,
Like,
so.
retired police officer?
Nope,
No.
no. Retired inspector from Springfield. So I think he'll do quite well. We're just busy. Nelson keeps getting grants and
We are working
Planning
on Aquifer more now. That's sort of Georgie, who's the new assistant town planner. That's sort of her main project right now, is getting the people who haven't registered their facilities registered, and the people who maybe should have transferred their registration but never did, having them transfer, or if someone didn't realize their registration was up, getting them re-registered. It's a pretty big project to reach out. I'm sure Jenny knows, to reach out to all of the businesses that are over the aquifer, and it takes a lot of inspection time, and Georgie's been on the phone with the state like every day,
Yeah,
talking to
it's-
DEEP. So
it's heavy administration.
yeah. So, but ultimately, you will be seeing more aquifer registrations. So.
You're making her be the bad guy right off the bat.
This is the third person that was supposed to be working on it since I've been here. So we're like, you know what? We just said,
Yeah.
just do it, take it,
Mr.
get it
Chairman?
done.
Commissioner Limo.
Thank you. I was wondering if you were able to get the information on the questions I had last meeting?
I apologize.
It was the old mobile station on Middle and 190,
Oh,
and information on the traffic study that was done.
Well, the traffic study is underway
Okay.
around the mall. They're doing the market studies around the mall itself. They're doing the market studies for the mall. So that's underway. I think they've done some counts, but I'm not positive about that. And as far as that mobile station, actually it's been cleaned up quite a bit. The graffiti was down or painted over. So this is the one over.
Yeah. Are you
Over on
curious
Freshwater.
about like reuse of that property?
Right, what's going on? Basically, an update on,
It's really difficult. There are a lot of restrictions on that deed that were placed there
Yeah.
when it was closed. That property is actually over an aquifer, so it can't be reestablished as a gas station, and there are a lot of restrictions given the cleanup that was done there on what could exist there again. It's also an odd-shaped lot. It's kind of like a triangle, which makes things difficult, and technically it's a corner lot, which just further complicates things zoning-wise too. So that's sort of been the situation. I mean, so many people have come into the office and asked about that property, and it's usually that they want to reestablish the gas station or open a convenience store. And
Mobile ain't gonna allow that.
is the, the environmental impacts all been taken care of from the leak years ago? Is it all cleaned up in that aspect?
As far as I believe so, there were environmental reports filed, and they have still ongoing monitoring wells.
Yep.
So
Basically, there's not much potential, is what you're saying for that?
I'm not going to say it's impossible. We just have to look at what the restrictions that were placed on the property would allow someone to do over there. And then we'd probably have to.
Get in and out of that property. That's the problem. The traffic on the corner. If you're trying to pull out of there and take a left onto Hazard Avenue, you can't unless you go to Middle Road and the light. And then to get out of it, there's not enough frontage. You got to go around that island.
Right.
So it's just very difficult for somebody to develop.
I agree.
Yeah.
You got to
did
take
add
a
it to
right
the
on
TIF.
the middle and then blow a U-turn to get around the island.
That would be adjoining property back if it-
Well, and that's what I was just going to say, John. There's a piece that goes right straight back. I'm not sure if it's separate or, I don't know how big that lot is.
What do you
We
mean?
did actually add it to the TIF,
There's
so they could,
an audio place right behind it.
No, the other way, kind of like, if you're looking, there's like some land back there.
I think the
I think it's all
owns-
wetlands, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe on that corner, I just looked at it today, actually, on the GIS. And there is that property behind it that's Long Radio, and I
Yeah.
think there's like a smoke shop or something over there and the driving school. But behind both of those is town-owned property. That's a lot of wetlands.
Oh, it's part of the industrial park, right?
May,
know if
probably,
it's part
it
of
might extend. It's a
industrial.
really big property, so
Yeah.
I think it might
I
extend.
think a
into it.
while back, Stop and Shop was going to do something with that property, and they ended up never doing it.
Yeah.
That property's been for sale for 30 years.
We have to find out about the wetlands, if it's the real old wetlands, did somebody see a turtle and it's no good, or we maybe get some tests done on it if it's town land, I don't know. I'd like to see that happen throughout the whole industrial park, actually.
Yeah, so we actually will be working on the industrial park and wetlands and seeing if we could combine some wetlands and maybe modify some others.
That would be good.
It would involve Army Corps and DEP, but I am actually working on a little project towards that end.
Well, maybe you can look at that piece, too.
Okay. So we have had a request from the Felician Sisters. So they're at 1297 Enfield Street. I have a feeling you all know exactly where they are. So they are working on kind of a master plan for their future, for their campus. And they were wondering if they could come in and discuss some possible changes that they'd like to see, so they could modify, so they could develop the campus the way they would like to. And last week I brought up the nonprofit housing. They didn't want me to say anything about that at first. They just wanted to kind of investigate nonprofit housing, but it is the church that was interested in putting up nonprofit multifamily. So, and they would be looking to possibly have the density modified a little bit. And they've already been approved and have
Apartments.
nonprofit housing on their site, but I think it's age restricted.
Yes.
So they were just inquiring whether or not they could come in and just have a conversation with the
Sure.
commission. So, okay, they'd like to come in on July 8th, so
When are we on vacation?
August.
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 No special meetings, no anything. August is.
So they're
Set them
welcome
up
to
for
come.
a special meeting in August? What day?
You're mean.
Sister Patricia's watching, she's going to come get you.
They love me.
So we'll put them on July 8th, if that's okay.
Great.
For informal discussion. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you very much. Jen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nope,
No.
I'm good.
Administrative approval report.
So it's just those two items that are listed. Wendy's has proposed changes to their existing landscaping. And then, so that's the part that's concerns planning and zoning, but they are also going to be taking down the atrium, which is sort of on the building side of things. But, you know, if you see demolition going on over there, that's what that is. They're taking down like the glass part of the building. And they're not going to put anything back there. It's just going to be landscaping. And then the other thing is Outback Steakhouse is changing the color of their roof. So it won't be, I think right now it's like a turquoisey color, and they're looking to make it a more muted color. So,
You said Wendy's is taking the glass part of their building down where people sit and eat?
yeah, it's like they called it, I think, like an atrium or something like that. Sunroom thing. Yeah.
Off the building?
Yeah.
But you still will be able to go in and,
Yeah, it's smaller than you think.
Oh,
They
all
will
right.
still be able to go in and sit down.
maybe I'm just thinking that there's windows all the way around the building in the back too.
No, it's like a kind of like a,
All right, okay, all right.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's it?
That's all I have for admin approvals.
Thank you. Applications to be received.
So just the two that are listed there, the Powder Hollow outdoor dining area, they is coming back because they want to build it, or they kind of did build it, not in the place where it was approved, and they expanded it, and so that's a modification to this original special permit. So they'll be coming back, and then there's a proposed place of worship, a church that wants to go in at 43 Pearl Street, where the former American Legion was. And that's all I have for the moment.
Thank you.
Actually, we did get a resubmittal from Blair Manor, and they made everything basically to the sizes that you want. All of the units are,
How does that work after they,
all I could say is that's what they did. So it's a substantial change from the previous application, so we accepted it, and they'd like to be heard at the next meeting.
I thought they couldn't come back for a year or something if they were rejected.
If they don't change anything, but this is a substantial change. They've made
Oh.
the units larger.
Okay, I
So-
misunderstood that then.
And even if they didn't, you obviously have the ability to say, well, yes, we'll see it again. So,
Oh, I thought that's why we rejected without prejudice, so they could come back immediately. And if we didn't, they couldn't come back.
yeah, well,
That's not
unless
correct.
you allow it.
Okay.
So they'll be back on for the next meeting.
I see they made the newspaper,
Yeah.
all the copper out of their building. That's
Say what?
the copper in their building. Somebody took the copper.
Oh, I just saw a picture of two people walking away from the building and they were
Yeah.
asking for help. Yeah, I didn't see what they stole.
Copper.
Oh, man.
What do you mean? That's good. They had to redo it anyways. They collect the insurance money off of it, helps them in construction costs nowadays. That's a win-win. Think positive, Lori. And now they'll get approved next meeting. They're on a roll.
They're on a roll.
Is this with the farmer's market stuff?
I don't know what that is. I can't see it.
I forgot that was in there.
For this?
Yeah, so those are just the amendments that you already approved, and I just wanted to provide those pages of the regulations to you so that you know what the updated regulation looks
Go
like.
ahead, Rich.
Because one more thing, I was waiting for opportunities and unresolved issues in terms of now that they passed the marijuana law, we need to address that as to what we're going to be doing or allowing or where we're going to allow it, so.
Well,
Well,
none of you are
you-
allowed to
you-
come here high.
They may not need to because the town council might beat you to it.
Right, there are towns that are definitely not allowing any kind of sales of marijuana in their towns. They've already had towns already passed that, so.
We will need to also address, we also need to address the accessory apartments that has been approved through the legislature, so we'll have to address that, because basically they're saying that anybody could have one. So, but I haven't read it in detail yet, so.
They can have a what?
Accessory apartments anywhere.
Yeah, the state basically is taking over planning and zoning.
So I could have one on my house?
Yeah.
You might.
Yeah.
I have to read it more thoroughly.
Yeah, I think that there's like an opt-out option.
Right.
So it's an automatic?
No, opt-out option, she
Oh,
said.
okay.
It's automatic unless you opt out.
Right. Why do you want accessory apartments at everybody's house?
Why not?
Because then you're turning all these residential neighborhoods into multifamily homes.
Half of them have them anyway.
The intent is to allow for people to provide affordable housing to others.
What's that?
The intent is to provide affordable housing to others.
And who polices affordable housing?
State.
The state. We have to show that we are encouraging affordable housing every time we go for a grant.
Okay, well, Enfield's got tons of affordable housing, so.
We don't, even if we're exempt from 8-30G, we still have to show that we are promoting it and encouraging it. That's the state POCD. So if we don't do that, if we don't continue to promote it, then we will start to have our grants denied.
When Fairfield and Greenwich start filling their town up, then come talk to the other towns.
That's
But
why they
until
did
then,
this, is because of the Fairfields and Stamfords and Greenwiches of Connecticut that refused to allow this. So it's called equitable housing. So is this something else we have to discuss?
Right, okay, so last meeting, we made bedrooms in the basement legal, providing they meet the building code.
Right.
When I asked the question about in-laws, nobody gave me an answer. It was both ways. So if a bedroom in a basement meets the building code, and it now meets planning and zoning, why wouldn't an in-law be legal? It's family.
An in-law apartment is different than accessory.
Forget that.
Okay.
That's a different,
okay.
because that's what's going to happen anyways if that passes. But like Ginny said, or somebody said, they're doing it illegal anyways. But what I'm saying is, somebody who has a legal bedroom in their basement and it's all finished or whatever, and they wanted to make it an in-law for either the younger kids to go down and mom and dad upstairs or vice versa, is that legal at this time in Enfield?
So it would require a special permit, first of all.
Right.
And part of the criteria for the in-law apartments is that they have to have proper ingress and egress. So that would be part of it too. So it's not just because, we're allowing bedrooms and basements, we're now allowing in-law apartments across the board without approvals. I mean, we can't police everyone's basement, but if people come in and do it the proper way, one of the things we would look at was whether or not that proposed in-law apartment in the basement does have proper ingress and egress from it. And I don't remember exactly what the regulation says offhand, but I believe they have to have some sort of access from the basement outside.
The hatchway.
You have to have ingress and egress from the outside to a basement.
Right. A hatchway. So
Yeah,
you have to have a
essentially.
hatchway.
Or
a walkout.
if the
Whatever.
basement is a walkout
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, I see that as the building code, because you need two means of egress out of the bedroom and
Right.
out of an apartment, any apartment. So a hatchway and the regular stairs would be the two means. But you got to come in for a special permit.
Yep.
Okay.
All of these things still need
Why they
to
don't.
be addressed.
What's that?
So many things still need to be addressed.
Well, just going through this whole process, I see why so many people don't follow the law.
Well,
Because if you meet the building code, there's why I couldn't put my mother or my mother couldn't put me down there is to go through all these. And how much is a special permit?
Usually 330.
Okay, 330 plus the building permit, plus the cost of all the egress windows and everything else. That's what's wrong with the system. Okay, never mind, I don't want an in-law. I mean, this person don't want an in-law. It's just a bedroom in the
I mean,
basement.
Between all of the regulation changes through the state and then COVID issues and extended executive orders, and some of them are extended and some of them aren't, and then trying to figure out whether we're doing virtual or in person or a hybrid meeting, it's a lot of moving parts. So we'll get on this.
That has nothing to do with an in-law.
What, moving parts?
All right, everybody
No,
all
it's
set?
something that we need to address it, along with the accessory apartments.
The PLCD committee meet virtually still, or are you in person?
Yeah.
Virtually?
Virtually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we really can't tie the meeting up for an hour every time Don comes here when people are waiting. So if people are interested in the plan of conservation and development, it is done by Zoom. Tune in.
So let us know when it is.
Right, because we can't, there's no way, especially since we've sat through it twice. Richard sits through it, I sit through it, and then to sit through it, you guys sit
But
through.
this was zoning.
yeah.
This wasn't POCD. This was the zoning regulations.
That's being addressed at POCD,
Pardon?
that he's dealing with at the plan.
No, there's two
No,
different
no, there's
entities.
two different-
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two different contracts. One for him to do the POCD, and we've got the steering committee.
Okay,
And this was the zoning regulations that he's
Okay.
updating.
okay.
So that's the big difference.
So how often is he going to come for that?
Periodically, not every
once a-
meeting.
No.
But, I mean, and that's why he said we might need to just set some specific workshops up,
Okay.
so.
Yeah,
but
that would make-
tonight was
okay,
completely
yes.
zoning regulations.
No workshops in August.
We're going to make sure we schedule 2. No, I'm kidding.
Keep it up, Ginny.
2 workshops and the special meeting for Blair Manor.
There you go. Okay?
Everybody all set?
Yeah.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Time isn't
Good.
really.
Make sure everybody takes home.